8 months earlier, back when I still believed my marriage was unbreakable, back when I still believed loyalty meant something, back when I still looked at Monica and saw the woman I had fallen in love with, not the stranger standing in front of me now. 8 months earlier, life was simple. I worked as an operations manager for a logistics company outside Atlanta. The pay was good, the hours were long, but I never complained, because everything I did was for my family, for Monica, for our future. Every morning I woke up before sunrise. Every night I came home exhausted. Yet somehow seeing Monica waiting for me always made the stress disappear. At least it used to. When we first met, she was working as a receptionist at a dental clinic. She had dreams, ambition, energy. I admired that about her. I encouraged her to go back to school, paid tuition when she couldn't afford it, worked overtime to cover expenses, skipped vacations, delayed buying a new truck, made sacrifices she never even knew about because I believed in her, and eventually those sacrifices paid off. She built a successful career in marketing. Her salary increased, her confidence grew. Everything seemed perfect, until little things started changing. At first it was almost impossible to notice. A late-night text message, a smile at her phone, a password change, a sudden need for privacy. Nothing serious, nothing obvious, nothing that screamed betrayal, just enough to make me uncomfortable. One night we were watching television when her phone buzzed. She grabbed it so quickly that I barely saw the screen. But I did notice one thing, the smile. It wasn't the smile of someone reading a funny message. It was the smile of someone thinking about another person. That smile stayed in my head for days. A week later, I asked her about it. She laughed. You've become paranoid. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was imagining things, so I ignored it. But the strange moments kept coming. More late-night texts, more hidden phone calls, more unexplained absences. Then came the gym membership. Monica had never liked exercising. Suddenly she was spending 2 hours there every evening, buying new outfits, taking selfies, posting motivational quotes. At first I thought she was simply focusing on herself, trying to improve, trying to stay healthy. Then I noticed something strange. She never posted photos from inside the gym, only from the parking lot, only before arriving, or after leaving, never during. It seemed odd, but I still trusted her, because trust is what marriage is built on, or at least that's what I believed. Then one Saturday afternoon, everything changed. I was cleaning the garage when Monica's sister called. Angela. We'd always gotten along. She sounded nervous, almost scared. Marcus, she said quietly, I think you need to know something. My stomach tightened. What is it? There was a long silence. Then she spoke. I saw Monica having lunch with Darren. I froze. Darren. A name I hadn't heard in years. Her ex-boyfriend. The man she dated before meeting me. The man she once described as a mistake. The man she claimed she never wanted to see again. What do you mean? I asked. Angela hesitated. I didn't want to believe it. My heartbeat accelerated. Angela. They weren't acting like old friends. The garage suddenly felt smaller. Hotter. Harder to breathe in. What exactly did you see? Another pause. Then words that changed everything. They were holding hands. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. For 11 years I had trusted my wife completely, and now a single sentence was threatening to destroy that trust forever. Angela continued talking, but her voice sounded distant, like it was coming from another room, another world. All I could hear were those 3 words. Holding hands. Together. That night Monica came home smiling, relaxed, happy. She kissed my cheek, asked about my day, acted completely normal. Meanwhile, I sat across from her at the dinner table wondering if the woman I loved had been lying to me for months. I wanted to confront her. I wanted answers. I wanted the truth. But something stopped me. Instinct. Because for the first time in our marriage, I realized there was a possibility that I didn't know my wife at all. And what I discovered over the following weeks would prove that fear was justified. Because 3 nights later, while Monica was sleeping beside me, a notification appeared on her phone. A message. One name. One name that instantly made my blood run cold. Darren. And the preview text underneath his name. contained 6 words that changed everything. I can't stop thinking about us. Double quotes, comma. I stared at the glowing screen for what felt like an eternity. I can't stop thinking about us. Double quotes, comma. 6 words. That was all it took. 6 words to shatter 11 years of trust. 6 words to make me question every conversation, every smile, every late-night excuse Monica had given me during the previous months. Beside me, she slept peacefully. Calm, comfortable, completely unaware that her secret was beginning to unravel. For several seconds, I simply sat there in the darkness. My heart pounded against my chest. Part of me wanted to wake her immediately. Part of me wanted to grab her phone and demand answers. But another part of me needed the truth. The whole truth. Not excuses, not half-truths, not carefully prepared lies. The truth. So I put the phone down exactly where it had been and waited. The next morning, Monica acted exactly as she always did. She kissed my cheek before leaving, told me she loved me, asked me to pick up groceries on my way home. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen the message myself, I would never have suspected anything. That realization hurt almost as much as the message itself, because it meant she had become very good at lying. Over the following week, I started paying attention, really paying attention, and suddenly things I had ignored for months became impossible to ignore. She smiled at her phone constantly. She left the room whenever certain calls arrived. She started protecting her screen whenever I walked nearby. She became defensive over simple questions. The woman who once told me everything had become a stranger living inside my house. One Friday evening, she announced she was having dinner with co-workers. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. This time I did. 3 hours later, I drove past the restaurant she claimed they were meeting at. Her car wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. 30 minutes. Nothing. No Monica. No co-workers. No dinner. Just another lie. I returned home before she did. At nearly 11 o'clock. She walked through the front door carrying takeout containers. Comma. Long night, she said. I looked directly into her eyes. How was dinner? Good. She smiled. Everyone had a great time. I nodded. Then she walked upstairs, as if she hadn't just lied directly to my face. That night I barely slept. Not because I was angry, because I was heartbroken. People think betrayal begins when someone cheats. It doesn't. It begins much earlier. It begins when honesty disappears, when transparency vanishes, when one partner starts building a secret life. And that's exactly what Monica was doing. The following week brought even more discoveries. Bank statements, restaurant charges, hotel deposits. Small clues that meant nothing individually. Together they painted a picture I didn't want to see. A picture of a marriage quietly falling apart. One afternoon I received another unexpected call. Angela again. This time she sounded even more nervous. Marcus. What happened? I saw them. My chest tightened. Where? A shopping center outside Atlanta. I closed my eyes. Angela hesitated. Then she said something that crushed me. They looked like a couple. The silence that followed felt endless. After hanging up, I sat alone in my office staring at the wall, trying to understand how we had gotten here, trying to understand how the woman I had supported for more than a decade could risk everything for a relationship that belonged in her past. But despite everything, I still loved her. And because I loved her, I decided to fight for my marriage. That weekend, I invited Monica to dinner. Just the two of us. No phones, no distractions, no excuses. For a little while, it felt like old times. We laughed, shared memories, talked about our early years together. The years when we barely had enough money to pay rent. The years when we faced every challenge as a team. For a moment, I thought maybe we could fix this. Maybe we could find our way back. Then I asked the question, "Are you happy?" The smile disappeared from her face. "What do you mean?" U.S. She looked away. That was all the answer I needed. Because happy people don't avoid questions like that. Happy people don't hide. Happy people don't live double lives. "I think we've changed," she finally said. The words felt like a knife. Not because they were cruel. Because they were true. "We can work on that," I replied. "We can go to counseling." She didn't answer immediately. Eventually she nodded. "Okay." For the first time in months I felt hopeful. Maybe there was still a chance. Maybe our marriage wasn't beyond saving. A week later, we sat inside a counselor's office. The counselor asked difficult questions. Questions about trust, communication, respect, commitment. Questions that forced us to confront uncomfortable truths. I answered honestly. Monica did not. I could see it. The counselor could see it. Everyone could see it. Her heart wasn't in the room. Her body was present. Her mind was somewhere else. And I already knew where, or rather who. After the third session, Monica announced she didn't want to continue. It isn't helping. I wasn't surprised. Because counseling only works when two people want the same outcome. And by then I wasn't sure Monica wanted the marriage anymore. A few days later came the moment that changed everything. I arrived home early from work. The house was quiet. Monica's car was gone. Nothing unusual. Then I noticed her tablet sitting on the kitchen counter, unlocked. A message notification appeared. I froze. The sender's name was Darren. For several seconds I stared at the screen. Then I looked away, then back again. The message preview was visible. And what I read made my entire body go cold. 5 days together. Just you and me. No interruptions. No husband. I felt sick. Physically sick. The room spun around me. For months I had hoped I was wrong. Hoped I was exaggerating. Hoped there was some innocent explanation. There wasn't. The truth was finally standing directly in front of me. Monica wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She wasn't trying to save our marriage. She was planning an escape with another man. That night I confronted her. Not with anger. Not with accusations. Just the truth. I know about Darren. For the first time in months, genuine fear appeared on her face. What are you talking about? Stop. The single word silenced her. For several seconds we stared at each other. Then something unexpected happened. She stopped denying it. She sat down, looked at the floor, and whispered words I will never forget. I didn't mean for this to happen. Those words hurt more than any lie, because they revealed something important. She knew exactly what she was doing. She just didn't want consequences. We talked for hours, or at least I talked. I asked questions. She gave vague answers. I asked if she loved him. She couldn't answer. I asked if she loved me. She couldn't answer that either. That silence told me everything. For the first time since discovering the truth, I began accepting reality. You cannot save a marriage by yourself. You cannot carry two people's commitment. You cannot force someone to choose you. And perhaps the hardest lesson of all, love without respect eventually becomes suffering. That realization changed me, because up until that moment I had been fighting to keep Monica. After that moment I started fighting to keep my dignity. 3 days later she announced she needed space. I knew exactly what that meant. The next morning she packed several bags. Not all of them. Just enough for a trip. She avoided eye contact the entire time. Finally she walked toward the front door. I watched silently. Waiting. Hoping. Praying she would stop. She didn't. She opened the door, turned around, and said something that still echoes in my mind. I need time to figure out what I want. Then she left. No tears. No apology. No explanation. Just gone. I stood in the empty house listening to the silence she left behind. For a long time I didn't move. I simply stared at the closed front door. The woman I had loved for 11 years had walked away, and she hadn't chosen herself. She hadn't chosen growth. She hadn't chosen healing. She had chosen Darren. The next few hours were among the hardest of my life. Friends called. Family called. Angela called. Everyone asked the same question. Are you okay? The truth was no. I wasn't okay. But I was beginning to understand something important. Pain is temporary. Self-respect lasts forever. That evening I made a decision. I would not chase her. I would not beg. I would not compete with another man for my own wife. If Monica wanted to leave, she was free to leave. But every choice comes with consequences. And sooner or later, everyone must live with those consequences. As darkness settled outside, I sat alone on the back patio. The house felt different. Empty. Quiet. Almost unfamiliar. My phone remained silent. No calls. No messages. No explanation. Nothing. Monica had disappeared. And as the first day became the second, and the second became the third, I slowly realized something terrifying. She wasn't planning to come home anytime soon. And deep down I knew that when she finally returned, Everything would be different. The first morning after Monica left felt different. Not because the house was empty, because the illusion was gone. For months I had been living between suspicion and hope. Suspicion that something was wrong. Hope that I was mistaken. Now there was no uncertainty left. My wife had chosen another man, and strangely that certainty brought peace. I woke up before sunrise and sat alone on the back patio. The air was cool. The neighborhood was quiet. For the first time in months there were no questions running through my mind. No wondering where she was. No wondering who she was texting. No wondering whether she was telling the truth. The answers had already arrived. The truth was painful. 11 years. 11 years reduced to silence. For a moment, sadness washed over me. Then something unexpected happened. It passed. Because I finally understood something important. You can love someone deeply and still accept that they no longer belong in your future. Later that morning, I met with an attorney. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted a battle. Because I needed clarity. The attorney listened carefully. When I finished explaining everything, he leaned forward. Marcus, the most important decision you'll make is emotional, not legal. I frowned. What do you mean? You need to decide whether you're preparing for reconciliation or preparing for reality. The words stayed with me long after the meeting ended, because deep down I already knew the answer. Monica had spent months preparing to leave. I needed to start preparing to move forward. That evening, Angela called. She sounded exhausted. I tried talking to her. I remained silent. She won't listen. I wasn't surprised. Monica had always been stubborn. But lately it had become something worse. Pride. The kind of pride that convinces people they can avoid consequences. The kind of pride that destroys good things. The next day brought another surprise. David stopped by unexpectedly. He carried 2 cups of coffee and a box of donuts. Neither of us talked about Monica at first. We talked about football.com, work, life, normal things. Finally, he looked at me. You know what your problem is? I laughed. I've got several. No. He shook his head. You spent years putting yourself last. The statement hit harder than I expected, because it was true. Every major decision had revolved around Monica, her dreams, her goals, her happiness. Meanwhile, I had quietly pushed my own needs aside, not because she asked me to, because I believed that was what a husband was supposed to do. Now I realize something. Sacrifice without balance eventually becomes self-neglect, and self-neglect creates resentment. The conversation changed something inside me. For the first time since Monica left, I wasn't thinking about saving the marriage. I was thinking about saving myself. Meanwhile, Monica's trip was becoming very different from what she had imagined. The fantasy she and Darren had created was beginning to collapse. Small inconsistencies became impossible to ignore. Stories didn't match. Promises changed. Plans shifted. Questions were avoided. The confident man Darren pretended to be started disappearing. The real Darren began appearing. And the real version wasn't impressive. By the 3rd day, Monica started noticing signs she had ignored before. Phone calls about overdue payments. Conversations about money problems. Excuses that didn't make sense. The image she had fallen for was cracking. But people rarely admit mistakes immediately, especially expensive mistakes. Back home, I was learning another lesson. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens decision by decision, hour by hour, day by day. That afternoon, I removed our wedding photo from the wall. Not out of anger, out of acceptance. Then I walked through the house, room by room, closet by closet, memory by memory.com. For years, every corner of the house had represented us. Now I needed it to represent reality. The reality that Monica had made a choice. And that choice came with consequences. By day 4, the silence from Monica had become impossible to ignore. No explanation, no concern, no effort, nothing. The absence itself became an answer. That evening, I sat alone at the dining room table, the same table where we had celebrated promotions, birthdays, anniversaries, dreams. I remembered the promises we made when we were young, promises about loyalty, partnership, commitment. Back then, I believed promises were permanent. Now I understood something different. Promises only matter when both people continue honoring them. Around midnight, Angela called again. This time she sounded frustrated. Marcus. Yeah? I think she's realizing she made a mistake. I looked toward the dark window. Maybe. Angela hesitated. Do you think you'll take her back? The question hung in the air. Months earlier, I would have answered immediately. Now I couldn't. Because something inside me had changed. The man desperately trying to save the marriage no longer existed. The pain had transformed him. The betrayal had awakened him. The silence had strengthened him. And for the first time, I was no longer afraid of being alone. The following morning, day 5 began. The sun rose over Atlanta. Birds filled the air with sound. Life continued exactly as it always had. Only I wasn't the same person anymore. I walked into the bedroom, opened Monica's closet, and started packing. Not angrily, not emotionally. Calmly, carefully. One suitcase, then another, then another. Each bag represented a chapter, a memory, a decision, a consequence. Hours later, every item she had left behind was packed. The room looked unfamiliar, almost empty, but somehow lighter, as if the house itself could finally breathe. By late afternoon, everything was ready. The suitcases, the travel bags, the boxes, every belonging neatly arranged. Waiting, not as punishment, as closure. Because closure isn't something someone gives you. Sometimes you create it yourself. As the evening approached, my phone finally rang. Angela. Her voice was tense. Marcus. What happened? She's coming back. I looked toward the driveway. A strange calm settled over me. No anxiety. No excitement. No fear. Just certainty. The fantasy was over. Reality was returning. A few minutes later, I heard the distant sound of an engine. Then another. I stood slowly. The setting sun cast long shadows across the neighborhood. A black SUV appeared at the end of the street, moving steadily toward the house, toward the life Monica had abandoned 5 days earlier. As the vehicle approached, I remained completely still. The driver slowed. Monica looked through the windshield, and then she saw them. Every suitcase, every bag, every box, lined up neatly across the driveway. For a brief moment, she looked confused, then shocked, then terrified, because in that exact second, she realized something she had never believed possible. I hadn't spent 5 days waiting for her. I had spent 5 days learning how to live without her. Monica froze. The SUV rolled to a stop at the edge of the driveway, but she remained inside, staring. Every suitcase she owned sat neatly arranged in front of the house. The pink luggage set, the designer bags, the carry-ons, everything. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Monica opened the door. What is this? Her voice trembled. I stood near the garage with my arms folded. Calm, silent, certain. The same certainty that had taken me 5 painful days to find. Darren stepped out from the driver's side. Unlike before, his confidence was gone. His shoulders were tense. His eyes avoided mine. He knew exactly what this looked like. And for the first time, he seemed uncomfortable being part of it. Monica walked toward me. Marcus, what are you doing? I looked directly at her. What does it look like? Her eyes widened. You can't be serious. For years, I had imagined what this moment might look like if betrayal ever entered my marriage. I thought there would be screaming, anger, arguments. Instead, there was peace, because the hardest battles had already happened inside me. The decision was made. The grieving was done. The acceptance had arrived. Marcus, let's talk. We are talking. She glanced toward the house, then back at me. You've put all my things outside. Yes. Why? The question almost surprised me, as though she genuinely didn't understand. As though disappearing, with another man for 5 days, should have produced no consequences. I took a slow breath. Because you left. Her face hardened. I came back. The statement revealed everything. She still believed returning erased what happened. She still believed she could leave and reclaim her old life whenever she wanted. But life doesn't work that way. Trust certainly doesn't. You didn't come back because you chose me. Her expression changed. You came back because whatever you expected out there didn't happen. Silence. The truth landed harder than any insult ever could. For several seconds she couldn't respond, because deep down she knew I was right. Darren shifted awkwardly behind her. Then something unexpected happened. He spoke. Maybe I should leave. Monica immediately turned toward him. The panic in her eyes was impossible to miss. Darren, But Darren was already backing away. For months he had enjoyed being the fantasy, the exciting alternative, the escape. Now he was standing inside the reality he helped create. And reality was far less appealing. Without another word, he returned to the COV. Moments later, he drove away, leaving Monica standing alone. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us. The man she had risked her marriage for wasn't willing to stand beside her when consequences arrived. A few neighbors had begun watching from a distance. Curtains moved. Front doors opened. People noticed, but I no longer cared. For years I had worried about appearances. Now I cared about truth. Monica looked exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence she carried 5 days earlier had disappeared. In its place stood uncertainty, regret, fear. Marcus. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. For a brief moment, 11 years of memories rushed through my mind. Our first apartment. Our wedding day. The nights we stayed awake planning our future. The sacrifices. The victories. The dreams. Every beautiful memory still existed. But so did the betrayal. And one apology couldn't erase months of choices. I believe you're sorry. Tears filled her eyes. Then why are you doing this? Because this wasn't about punishment. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about anger. It was about reality. Because being sorry doesn't rebuild trust. The tears finally began falling. I made a mistake. I nodded slowly. Yes. Her shoulders shook. Please don't do this. The old version of me might have folded. The old version might have accepted any explanation just to avoid losing her. But the last 5 days had changed something fundamental inside me. I had rediscovered my self-respect. And once someone truly finds that, they cannot willingly abandon it again. I reached into my pocket and removed a single envelope. Inside were copies of documents, financial separation paperwork, attorney contact information, everything prepared calmly and legally. I handed it to her. She stared at it, then stared at me. The reality finally settled over her. This wasn't a threat. This wasn't a dramatic gesture. This was the end. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then she asked one final question. When did you stop loving me? A sad smile crossed my face. That's the problem. She looked confused. I never stopped. The tears streamed faster. Because she finally understood. This wasn't happening because love disappeared. It was happening because respect had. And no marriage survives after respect is gone. The sun was beginning to set behind the neighborhood. Golden light stretched across the driveway. The same driveway where our story had effectively ended. I picked up my keys, turned toward my truck, then paused. Without looking back, I spoke one final time. I hope one day you find the happiness you were looking for. My voice remained calm, sincere, honest. But it won't be here. Then I walked away, not because I won, not because she lost, but because some chapters must end before a better life can begin. As I drove away, I looked into the rearview mirror one last time. Monica stood beside the suitcases. Alone. Not abandoned. Not punished. Simply facing the consequences of her own choices. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt free. The greatest lesson I learned wasn't about betrayal. It was about self-respect. Love without trust becomes pain. And forgiveness without accountability becomes permission. Monica didn't lose her marriage in 5 days. She lost it through countless choices made long before she left. Never let loyalty make you tolerate disrespect. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away peacefully. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below and remember, your dignity is priceless.